Hey everybody, welcome back to Illiterate Book Club. I'm Matt.
I'm John.
And this is going to be our overall review of Ragnarok.
Yes.
Almost said Thor Ragnarok. different show. This is
the show, Netflix show, Ragnarok.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Not from America.
No, it's not.
I can tell because their mouths don't match their words.
That was the only... It wasn't the fact that it was in Norway somewhere.
Was it?
Yes.
No, okay. Obviously, this is... Yeah.
Right. But, so we've actually gotten a pretty big response from you guys that was, letting us know, hey, this is a show that we should be checking out. And
Right.
so we dove into it. So
We watched it all at once.
Right, we did. We
whole
watched it
day.
all day. And
Yes.
it really sucked us in. That's one thing I'll say good about it.
Yeah.
Now, from here on, we are going to be talking about spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, maybe not watch this right now.
Right.
Just like and subscribe, leave it running. So yeah, let's dive in. So what do you think, what was your kind of overall impressions of it?
Yeah, I wasn't sure going into this what the sort of general idea would be around the world. You know, I knew it was going to involve the Norse mythology.
Right.
And it was going to be in Norway and this town Edda that is, related to Norse mythology and its origins and its writings and all that fun stuff. But I wasn't really sure how they were going to, approach it. Was it going to be, forgive me, Twilight-ish, where it was, it kind of loosely had those kind of things in it, but it was more focused on the sort of teenage relationships.
It did have a Twilight feel at certain points.
There was a little bit of the sort of moody teenager-ish things that happened.
And then also just the fact that it's you had this immortal type family who was rich, who
they had that element of it,
right?
have
which
a
obviously
parallel. It's completely different,
right.
So don't think we're trying to directly compare this to Twilight.
But I love Twilight.
He does.
Go ahead.
Anyway, but I wasn't really sure in the beginning, but when it was jumping in and within the first 2 minutes, you had the boy who would become Thor.
Right.
Meet these two characters that were essentially
like Odin
and Freya and then it sort of awakened his powers, and then that was the first episode was him all of a sudden realizing he's super strong and he doesn't need his glasses anymore, and almost superhero origin story-ish, like Spider-Man kind of in a way, but with
super cool on that
Norse mythology. So I thought that was what kind of drew me in. It was okay, this is interesting. Where are they going to take this? Right.
And I do feel like there was a lot of hurry up and wait in this.
Yeah, it was a slow build.
It was definitely a slow build. If I had a criticism, which I'll go more into the criticism later, overall, I did definitely enjoy it. I think I got really sucked in, kind of like you did. Talking about the dubbing, because you were kind of making a little bit of a joke about it earlier, but the dubbing actually worked for the vast majority.
Yeah,
of it,
whoever they got, if it was, I don't know if it was, I didn't really pay attention to the credits, so I don't know if it was the same actors doing English or if it was different actors overdubbing, but it was really well done. Right,
and I like that they at least had appropriate accents and everything as well. You know what I mean? It wasn't.
You can forgive us if we didn't do the subs this time. Sorry, guys. I know there's some people that make a big deal of dubs versus subs.
Right, but the people in the comments let me know that it was dubbed.
Right.
So I was like, cool, okay, let me, because I'm Illiterate Book Club, I'm reading.
Well,
so I was like, oh, is these pictures?
But you're right, I mean, definitely, it didn't hinder it, right? It wasn't so outlandish or so ridiculous, or
no. There was a few different characters that felt a little odd, but the main characters, I didn't even really notice it that much.
It definitely did well, and so I mean, there's, I guess the next thing would be the special effects, the cinematography and special effects. I think was really well done. Yeah. For it doesn't feel like this was big budget.
No.
But it also didn't feel cheap.
No.
They were in a beautiful location, and that did a lot for them.
100%.
Being in a place that gorgeous and just having natural panoramic scenes to play with did a lot for the show and setting the scene and tone of everything. Yeah. But even when they had special effects, I think they did them in a way that, just the eyes of a character would change, or you had the lightning kind of storm stuff come up. Yeah. And so those things were subtle enough that it didn't feel cheap or cheesy. Right.
I like the blue hue that they played around with. Everything that is color graded, kind of has a particular tone. A lot of times it's the orange and teal, but since you were in that cold, like they really leaned into the blue so much that all their like lens flares, you know, whatever, were blue, which is cool. I thought that was a little unique touch, especially being like, you know, cold and Thor and lightning and all that kind of stuff. It made sense to be blue. So as the story progressed, I mean, how did you feel, I guess, more about the second act towards it? Because, like, you know,
so it did have like this big crescendo. I felt like, you know, into episode 3, because it's only 6 parts. It was like episode 3 when you have like you sort of get more revelations, right? You have this family invites the main character and his brother over, and then you have the whole drunken party with that arm wrestling competition that ends up breaking the table. Exactly. And that was like a really dramatic and a really interesting like build-up moment.
Yeah.
And that was like at the end of the episode, I was like, I said to you, it was like, oh my goodness, I want to know what happens next, because this looks like a really big like moment.
Yeah, we actually had intentions of watching like the first few episodes, doing like individual reviews of them, and then coming back and watching. But after, because we didn't have time all that day, but after that we're like, we're not recording today. We're just gonna finish this show. Yeah. And so in that respects, it did great. But I do feel like, kind of like what you said, at the crescendo, that happened, and then it was kind of like, oh, we're slowing way back down again. You know what I mean?
It did do.
I expected it to kind of keep ramping.
Right, it did do a flat line in there, and it wasn't. Part of it, I think, was they really dove more into the Earth science, like, you know, take care of the Earth kind of messaging. Yeah, which worked. I mean, it is filling into this, you know, the sort of time that we live in, but also the stories and the culture that they're pulling from, you know, having this messaging underlying of, you know, we should be taking care of the Earth, and having, you know, setting up the contrast of these characters who are trying to be the voice of, you know, let's stop trashing the planet, versus those who are like, well, stop trying to slow down progress, kind of stuff. That worked for the messaging, but it did slow down the development of the character and like what he was trying to do. And so it made it like after, like, with episode 4 or 5 kind of into that mix was where it was sort of dawned. It's like, oh, they're preparing for another season. Yeah, 100%. They're not really preparing for a big finale.
Yeah, and I think that was, if I have my biggest complaint of it is, like, I enjoyed it pretty much 60 or 70% through, but when I started to realize, man, nothing's going to be happening this season. You know what I mean? Not nothing, but you know what I mean? It's like none of this is getting resolved at all. It didn't seem like, you know. Right. And I'm not faulting anybody for wanting a second season, and maybe
and that's part of like the making TV shows now is doing that.
Right. And I'm not sure. It says it's a Netflix original, but a lot of times Netflix picks up foreign series, and you know what I'm saying, like foreign series.
Yeah, so I don't know.
So maybe this is 2 or 3 seasons already in there. I don't really know. But I don't know if Netflix like gave the money and made them create it, or not made them, but you know what I mean, produced them.
This is straight original, or if it was
right. And I'm sure some of you guys can comment below and maybe give us a little bit more information on that. But I think that really kind of hindered my enjoyment once especially at the end, and we're gonna have another video talking about what we want to see in the next season. But that's my biggest complaint, is that, you know, I don't necessarily felt like I was like, okay, wait, we got 10 minutes left in this series. I'm like, this is the last episode? Yeah. Because, you know, and then at the very end, you know, we can kind of go into it, I guess, at this point. You know, it had that big lightning strike.
Yeah, we had a really cool moment at the end.
A cool moment, but I guess it
didn't feel as climactic as it maybe could have. To me, it didn't feel as like a great moment as like the middle of the show episode of the series. Right. Where that moment felt like, oh, this is really dramatic. Something big is gonna fall. The fallout of this is gonna be really huge.
Right, and just kind of I kind of expected, you know, just in my mind for the next whatever. I guess it had 3 more episodes at that time. Him like basically taking down each one individually.
Becoming more dramatic kind of thing.
Yeah, and maybe it's not what it was necessarily trying to do, but it just...
and so that's where I'm like, where it might get into the realm of like, if you're a fan of like Vampire Diaries or Supernatural, where the villains, it's less about the physical confrontation of the villains and more about like social posturing, and political posturing, which is, it's kind of interesting to do this with this because, you know, the main character is really not socially capable.
Right.
I mean, he's really awkward. He's really not. Yeah. He's a little too honest and not incredibly clever, which is true to the mythologies and all that. Right. So I think they really hit that note well.
I kept yelling. I'm like, just throw a damn hammer and show them you're not crazy.
So I can throw a hammer from it.
It's like I can throw a hammer really far. But you know, like that entire part just kept annoying me. Like, especially when it went back to
just show somebody.
We'll make him think he's crazy, and he's like telling the entire story without showing anything.
Right,
you know what I mean? It's not like he was like trying to be sly and say, "No, I'm nobody special. I imagined this." He's literally telling everybody, "No, I'm Thor. I'm fighting these frost giants." But he won't like pick up something and show
right.
somebody.
So that's an interesting take on it too. Is like they're playing more with the psychological part of the characters, and he ends up doing like turning the tables on him.
Right.
But again, there wasn't a lot of build up to it. It just sort of happened. And like he all of a sudden like, oh, he got clever. He had an idea that worked for him. At the end.
Right.
But anyway, so I think the last thing I think would be good to kind of touch on, since we're going to do another conversation on this show. The actual like mythology, like any kind of series or show or books that try to touch on mythology and update them, it's hit and miss for me. You know, like I wasn't a huge fan of how Percy Jackson did it. That series, there were some things I liked about it. Yeah, I thought the books did it okay. The movie, I didn't like it all. But anyway, but like this, so you aren't really familiar necessarily with Norse mythology as much as like broad. The Greeks mythology stuff. So what do you think, like coming into it, not knowing fully in depth, how much did you pull from this about like what was mythological and what was just these characters?
I mean, obviously I knew frost giants, I knew Odin, you know, I knew all that type. I don't know how they play on the heroes. Like, I didn't know necessarily Thor was supposed to be, I guess, not very bright. I mean, I guess you kind of get that in like the Marvel version of it.
Right, and there's a lot of people that like are really do not like Marvel's representation of Thor and the Norse pantheon. Like that they change a lot about it. Right. For Marvel's sort of aesthetic.
Gotcha. And so I mean, like I got I guess the general. I was a little confused by the fact that I think because this is obviously a sci-fi type show as well, or you know what I mean. It has its
fantasy.
It has its own story. So I guess in my thinking, like I didn't realize. Like she said, Ragnarok's just the beginning, and I get that it is the birth and as far as I know, it's like the death and rebirth of Norse mythology from what I know of it. But I was kind of a little confused by what the history they were trying to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's
like, where does this play in?
That's kind of because like you know you still have like the snake. I mean, the giant. There's supposed to be a giant serpent. You have the wolf, which he kind of fights, but to me, it was a little not as big of a fight. Like it happened, and it was an interesting scene. Yeah. But you know, having like the wolf, really come into play. I'm not sure if they're gonna bring him back somehow or reintroduce.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway,
because that's what I was confused by.
But that, I mean, like,
because it didn't feel like it was the story that I
right,
thought.
And that's the thing I expected at the end of this season was that you know you have the Thor character awakening throughout this whole season. I was expecting like some of the other of the pantheon of the gods to wake up. I was expecting like his brother to like emerges, you know, the spirit of Loki kind of like awaken, and he is a trickster person in the show, and he's that kind of character.
He was somebody I really hated at first, but then by the end I'm like I like that
which
guy.
Which is kind of the way Loki is.
Good.
But you don't see his powers. Like Loki has very specific powers, and you don't see those awaken yet, and there's other characters, and like I was expecting Odin to do like the Odin looking character to like come out, but all you really see is the sort of the Frey witch,
right.
Frey, what witch kind of character, instigating and sort of tapping things along, which is fine. That's the character, and that works. But I really expected more out of like the guy, and that may come in next season. So I don't want to talk too much more about that since we're gonna do
we're gonna do more talk about that.
Let's give this thing a number rank.
If I was honestly like, if I was ranking like the first half of it, I would have gave it like, it would have been up there like a 7 or 8 for me. You know what I mean?
Thanks, yeah.
But since the second half did kind of drop the ball, in my opinion, it still made me interested to see where it goes from here. But it brought the score down quite considerably. I'd give it, still recommend it, still enjoyed it, but I'd give it a 5.5 out of 10.
5.5. All right, and that's kind of the same reasoning for me. I'll just bump it up and give it a 6.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm still gonna watch the next season, just see where they go. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I enjoy this world. I think they're doing some interesting things, but I also enjoy the Pantheon, the Norse. I don't think there's enough stories that do these characters and reintroduce these stories to the people. And even this show hasn't really reintroduced the depth of stories that are available to it with this Pantheon. So I'm hoping for more of that. So that's kind of why I'm 6 with an anticipation.
Right. I guess that's where I'm at with the 5.5. Maybe I'm being a little too critical, but I guess it honestly kind of, it lifted me so high and then let me down. That's probably why it kind of is getting it even worse than what I would think. But I'm obviously still excited to see where it goes. But I hope and we'll talk about that later, but I hope in the next one it's a little bit of a better paced, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
So,
anyway.
What do you guys think? I see from some of the comments on our trailer reaction that you guys are digging it. But, give us some details. Drop it in below that we've seen it now, spoilers free. Keep it, rain.
Whatever.
As many spoilers as you want. Like and subscribe, do all the stuff, and we'll catch you later.